Well, good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Blavatnik School of Government. I'm Nairi Woods, Dean of the school, and it's just a thrill to be working with the Inamori Foundation for this first ever Kyoto Prize event, an Inamori Foundation event in Europe. And I first want to extend on behalf of all of us our warmest welcome to Dr. Inamori and his colleagues from the Inamori Foundation, and more widely from Japan. We are thrilled to have you here with us this evening. Thank you. As the Blavatnik School of Government, we're thrilled to lead the university's partnership with the Inamori Foundation. As you know, this school was created in 2010 thanks to a very generous benefaction by Len Blavatnik, who sends well wishes to everybody here this evening. And it's one of the ways that Oxford seeks to improve the world in which we live. And this particular effort is one which focuses on how we can help improve government in every region of the world, through research, through engagement, and through teaching and education. Our students doing the Master of Public Policy and those doing the doctorate are all around. It's lovely to see you here this evening, and they're from more than 70 different countries. And they, along with the faculty of the school, the professors, the staff, and the practitioners and leaders from around the world who are spending time with us here at the school to reflect, we have all got so much to learn from Dr. Inamori. We're going to hear more from Dr. Inamori soon this evening. But one of this year's Kyoto laureates said earlier today that keeping it simple was absolutely crucial to the best scientific research. And Dr. Inamori does this so powerfully, and I'm just going to read one quote from his Compass to Fulfillment, because I think it captures something that everyone in the Blavatnik School and so many colleagues across Oxford are trying to achieve. He says, "Our lives take on their true meanings when we do our best at the ordinary things in life, working hard, being thankful, thinking good thoughts, doing the right thing, practicing self-reflection and self-discipline, refining our minds and elevating our characters in everyday life." I think it's a beautiful statement of what this place, Oxford University, is trying to do through its research, through its teaching, and through its engagement. And for this reason, we're thrilled tonight, tomorrow, to be honoring this collaboration with the Inamori Foundation, which is an embodiment of these values. Now, let me just briefly take you through the running order. What are you in for over the next 1¼ hours? So, in a moment, I will introduce our Vice-Chancellor, who will present our very honored guest and his lecture. We'll then be treated to a musical performance, and following that, the Chancellor of the university will lead us in a small ceremony in respect of the forum and the induction of our guest into the Chancellor's Court of Benefactors. At 6:15, we'll invite you all to celebrate with a drink and some canapes in the room behind us. So that's just to give you a sense of tonight's activities. A small piece of housekeeping. On your seat, you have a headset. Those of you who are fluent in Japanese will not need it, but those of you who are not fluent in Japanese will benefit from it. So let me walk you through what you need to do. Pick up your headset now, plug in the headset to the unit, switch it on using the standby button, select channel 1 for English, and channel 2 for Japanese. And I wish I knew how to say that in Japanese, but I don't, and I hope you'll help your Japanese neighbors if they're not following me. And then you'll see the volume button is along the side. So that's the small piece of housekeeping. Let me just introduce now Oxford University's Vice-Chancellor. We are thrilled to have a Vice-Chancellor who looks out across the whole world, thinks about the whole world, as well as thinking about each part of this university. And it makes her a natural leader of this global university and the very challenging times that lie ahead. We're thrilled to be led by Vice-Chancellor Professor Louise Richardson and to be taking forward this initiative through the Blavatnik School of Government. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor.
Good evening. It's absolutely wonderful to see so many people here in this fabulous space. It's a real honor to have been invited to welcome Dr. Kazuo Inamori here to the Blavatnik School of Government as we celebrate the launch of the Kyoto Prize at Oxford. The prize is a celebration both of scholarship itself and of the values that are the foundation for the type of committed, collaborative scholarship that works towards the betterment of society. As Dean Woods has said, we live in uncertain times, and the world's great universities have a crucial role to play in anchoring public discourse, not only in evidence and critical thinking, but also in ethical action. So the values of the Kyoto Prize could not be more important to us. Oxford is especially proud to know Dr. Inamori, the prize's founder. He was born in 1932 and graduated from Kagoshima University in 1955 with a Bachelor of Engineering degree. He then joined Shofu Industries, an insulator manufacturing company in Kyoto. In April 1959, he established Kyoto Ceramic Co Limited and served as president and chairman of the company until 1977, when he assumed the title of founder and chairman emeritus. The deregulation of Japan's telecoms industries in 1984 enabled Dr. Inamori to establish the DDI Corporation, which subsequently merged with KDD and IDO to create KDDI Corporation. Dr. Inamori served as chairman emeritus and was named honorary advisor in June 2001. In February 2010, Dr. Inamori assumed the role of chairman of Japan Airlines in order to rebuild the company's operation following the bankruptcy. He became chairman emeritus of the company in 2013 and honorary advisor 2 years later. Today, Dr. Inamori holds several posts not directly related to the business world. These include chairman of Kyoto Chamber of Commerce and Industry, foreign member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Science, trustee emeritus of the Carnegie Institution of Washington, and foreign associate of the National Academy of Engineering in the United States. Dr. Inamori spoke eloquently about his remarkable business success in the lecture he delivered in the Sheldonian Theatre in 2014. Many people here, I know, remember it well. But that is only one part of his remarkable career. In 1984, he made a personal endowment to establish the nonprofit Inamori Foundation, of which he is president. Through the foundation's work, he has enabled the articulation of a compassionate, altruistic vision of the role of individuals in society. When establishing the foundation, Dr. Inamori also created the Kyoto Prize to recognize those individuals and organizations who've made an outstanding contribution to society. As the leader of a private management school operating in 88 locations, Dr. Inamori teaches his philosophy to business owners and entrepreneurs. We are absolutely delighted that he is with us here this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting Dr. Kazuo Inamori to deliver a lecture on From a Society of Greed to a Society of Altruism.
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Inamori. I am extremely delighted to be able to greet you. On this occasion, our Inamori Foundation and Oxford University have welcomed a laureate of Kyoto Prize. And so this is the Kyoto Prize at Oxford, which has just been initiated. In order to implement this wonderful project, we are extremely grateful to Mrs. Professor Louise Richardson and other related people. I'd like to take a broad view of human history and recognizing the type of time that we are living in, and I would like to express my views how we as humans should live. First of all, let us look at the space and the Earth that we are living in. What are their origins? As you know, the universe came into being about 13.8 billion years ago in a huge explosion known as the so-called Big Bang. After that, the universe has continued to expand, and it is still expanding. After that start of the universe, and about 4.6 billion years ago, particles within the cloud of gas and dust that was the then solar system started colliding together to form small planets. Some of the small planets then coalesced to form the planet that is the Earth we live on now. The intense heat of the Earth began to cool, and about 4 billion years ago, oceans which harbored the first signs of primitive life were formed. The life in those oceans evolved and started to move onto land about 400 million years ago. These organisms that had moved onto the land continued to evolve, and about 7 million years ago, the first humans are thought to have emerged in Africa. Different species of hominid and other primitive man then successively evolved until the appearance of our own human species, so-called Homo sapiens. We humans are therefore just one of the species that evolved and developed on Earth. And in the early days, we sought our livelihood through hunting and gathering. Our earlier ancestors gathered nuts and berries in the forests, picked the buds of plants, caught fish in the rivers and sea, and trapped wild animals in the mountains. At that time, as hunters and gatherers, humans lived in the Earth's natural environment as passive beings. Humans were nothing more than just one of the living species out of all the species that made up the so-called biosphere. Humans therefore lived within the constraints of the natural world extracting the materials and energy they could out of the Earth's natural cycles. However, humankind entered a new era about 10,000 years ago when they turned to agriculture and livestock farming. They burnt down forests to make fields, cultivated plants to make food, and opened up woodlands to make pastures for their stock. Agriculture and livestock farming irreversibly changed the Earth's cycle of materials and energy. As hunters and gatherers, humans merely made use of the Earth's materials and energy as weak, passive beings. But with their adoption of agriculture and livestock farming, they became beings who actively sought to control the Earth's cycles of these things. In this way, humans freed themselves from the bonds of the biosphere I talked about earlier and started to create their own human sphere in which to live. This also brought about a psychological change in humankind. Humans bid farewell to being governed by nature, and they started to use the Earth's natural resources for their own benefit through their intelligence and will. In this way, humans started in the benefit that exists to this day, that nature is something to be subjugated for the benefits of humankind. They also assumed that nature and natural resources were in infinite supply. With such a belief in mind, humans cleared many of the Earth's forests, transforming them into fields where crops can be grown or farms where livestock could be grazed. In doing so, they changed and damaged the Earth's biosphere, causing the loss of many biological species. But even so, humans in this period were still using only their own physical power, or at most cattle or horsepower, and therefore their impact on the natural world was still limited. At the same time, with the shift to agriculture and livestock farming, humans also changed the nature of their society. Having started food production, they started to store any surplus in an attempt to secure abundance and stability. As a result of this, humans started to plunder each other's wealth, that is, their stock of food. As their desire of acquiring abundance intensifies, conflicts escalated as humans tried to plunder each other's wealth, and they started to build walls and moats around their cities to protect themselves from marauding outsiders. The ruins of ancient civilizations we see today, with their imposing ramparts and moats, are testament to human desires and the conflicts that they engender. Over the course of several thousand years of boom and bust, humans, with their boundless curiosity and spirit of inquiry, sought to understand the principles of nature phenomena and also used their creative originality to make things. As a result, about 250 years ago, the Industrial Revolution took place in Britain. With the invention of the internal combustion engine, humans were able to harness massive driving force in place of cattle and horsepower. Acquiring this driving force also led to a massive increase in the impact of humankind on the Earth's cycles of materials and energy. Critical to the unleashing of this great driving force were fossil fuels. Humans came to place a huge burden on the Earth's cycle of materials and energy through their reliance on the massive amount of fossil fuels that were needed to power internal combustion engines. This can be felt still today with our global environment problems. Free from the bonds of the biosphere and with this new driving force, humans retreated farther from the biosphere and developed their human sphere to an abnormal degree. Having captured this new driving force, humans were driven by the desire to lead a more abundant life and create a more convenient society, and therefore pushed their curiosity and spirit of inquiry even further to develop even more advanced technologies. In this way, in a mere 200 years, humans were able to build the convenient civilization of plenty we live today. Today's material civilization is built on the economic system of mass production, mass consumption, and mass disposal. Relentless economic growth is achieved through making a lot of things, using a lot of things, and discarding a lot of things. Personally, as an individual, I feel we should not be so wasteful. But considering our social system as a whole, this leads to economic development, which in turn leads to the development and happiness of all society. However, a civilization based on such desires and which turns its back on the natural world cannot last for long. In 2007, I traveled through Egypt for a week, guided by one of the world's most renowned Egyptologists and accompanied by a philosopher. Egyptian civilization collapsed about 2,000 years ago, leaving behind pyramids and great temples. Seeing the vast, lonely ruins rising up in the desert gave me pause for thought to the passing of civilizations. A civilization at the apex of prosperity fell to ruins through trying to subjugate nature and using natural resources recklessly. This was also the fate of many other civilizations. If that is the case, how long will our own current material civilization last, given that it started a mere 200 and some years ago, with the Industrial Revolution? Our civilization has seen our species, which is just one species of living being, follow their desires slavishly and build a convenient life of plenty by exploiting other living things and damaging the natural environment. There is no doubt that such a civilization will destroy the Earth's environment, ultimately bringing about its own demise. What is more, the population explosion is continuing. In around 1800, the world's population was about 1 billion. Now, 200 years later, it has ballooned to about 7 billion. By the second half of this century, it is expected to reach 10 billion. This enormous number of people, 10 billion people, all aspire to live an abundant and convenient life of plenty. However, it is thought that if everyone were to live the life of the average American, the maximum number of people the Earth could support is about 2.5 billion. We have already exceeded that number. far from being able to lead a life of plenty, it has to be asked if all these 10 billion people will even be able to secure the minimum amount of energy, food, and water necessary to guarantee their survival. It goes without saying that even though humans driven by their desire may want to continue to live a convenient life of plenty, this is only going to be possible to the extent the Earth allows. This limit will be reached in the not too distant future, probably in the space of a few decades. Sooner or later, modern civilization will collapse and humankind will be annihilated. This is the state humankind is in today, in my view. Next, I would like to turn to the economic society in which we live. I think the same applies here too. Present-day capitalism, as exemplified by the United States, is driven by human desire, with people wanting to make as much money in as easy a way as possible. Humankind has used its intelligence and will to pursue unbridled development. The prime example of this is in the financial sector, where innovations in technology have given rise to products where money breeds money. Advanced mathematics and statistical methods, coupled with leading-edge IT, have given rise to successive leverage-based financial products that are sold throughout the world, bringing massive profits to the financial institutions. Selfish desire has become the engine for obtaining massive profit in as easy a way as possible and purely for one's own boundless gain. However, these financial products, smacking of unbridled desire, also included as securities extremely high-risk subprime loans, which, as they circulated around the world, brought about a crash which led to the collapse of the Lehman Brothers in September 2008. This greatly damaged the global economy. This episode brought huge financial institutions, primarily in the United States and other countries, to the brink of collapse, and governments around the world had to pump in huge amounts of cash to save them. Eventually, the global economy stabilized, but the time when a storm of selfish desire was blowing all around the world and brought us to the brink of economic crisis is still fresh in our memories. The global economy is currently based on and functions through capitalism. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union and other communist nations from 1991, humankind has assumed that capitalism the only viable economic system and has upheld market fundamentalism, neoliberalism, and a results-oriented approach as the proper social norms.
Market fundamentalism and neoliberalism under the auspices of free competition and non-interference in the economy have endangered an unequal society of the strong versus the weak. A result-oriented approach has led to an overwhelming gap in pay between the haves and the have-nots, leading to even greater inequality and causing irreconcilable social inconsistencies. The collapse of the Lehman Brothers I mentioned earlier brought to light the excessively large pay of business leaders, particularly in the financial world of the US. Strong criticism was directed not just at the lack of fairness in society and the business world, but also at the excessive selfishness stemming from people's personal desires. A business makes money through the concerted effort and dedication of all employees. The idea that everything depends only on those at the top and that they can be paid huge salaries is deplorable. This greedy capitalism is engendering a huge gap between rich and poor. Not long ago, in October 2011, huge demonstrations to occupy Wall Street were held to protect against the fact that 1% of the world's wealthiest controlled 99% of the world's least wealthy. In his global bestseller, Capital in the 21st Century, the French economist Thomas Piketty highlighted this poverty gap as a huge problem. He wrote that if R is greater than G, where R is a return on capital and G is a rate of economic growth, the poverty gap will increasingly widen, leading to greater instability and disorder in the world. The lack of fairness in the distribution of wealth has improved to some extent through a series of checks and balances put in place by society and governments. Also, international monitoring and legislation has succeeded in curbing to some extent financial products such as the subprime loans described earlier. But as long as business leaders remain greedy, the lack of fairness and inconsistencies of an unequal society based on a results-oriented approach will not be fundamentally resolved through regulations and registration alone. And as long as investors and investment companies seek ever higher yield because of their escalating greed, new high-risk, high-return financial products will continue to be developed and proliferate around the world, leading inevitably to another financial crisis at some point. I believe that the problem of today's capitalism is not a problem of system or procedures, but rather a problem of human attitude. I believe that it will prove difficult to solve the problems engendered by today's capitalism without fundamentally changing our attitude to moderate our capitalism. I believe that the most important thing for those of us living in a modern capitalist society is to have a correct set of ethics and a strong moral code. As Max Weber wrote, capitalism is an economic system that seeks profit for society, not profit for the self. How should we live in today's desire-infused capitalist society? There is a way of thinking that is necessary in order to put capitalism back on the right tracks. I believe that this is the idea of being contented with what one has. Being contented with what one has is an idea based on the Chinese Zhunkyu period philosopher Lao Tzu, who said, "He who is content with a little is rich. He who strives to be such has what he aims to for." That is, he who is contented with what he has is truly rich, and he who strives to be this way will always succeed. Human desire is a motivational force that brought about humankind's current boundless development. However, continuing to be driven by those desires will inevitably lead to our destruction. We have to moderate our desires. To do this, we need this idea of he who is content with a little is rich. We need to rein in our excessive desires and know when to say enough is enough in order to keep within the bounds of the Earth's resources. If we cannot do this, modern civilization will collapse and humankind will face its ruin. One thing to note is that the majority of the Earth's population of about 7 billion come from developing countries. These people all aspire to a better standard of living and will dramatically increase their use of natural resources and energy in their race to achieve higher rates of economic development. We cannot stamp down the ambition of people in developing countries who want to escape from a minimum standard of living. And at the same time, it is not realistic to expect people in developed nations to give up their life of plenty. Yet, the Earth's resources are finite and cannot provide all the resources and energy of those in the developing world, along with those who are living in an advanced civilization in developed countries. In order for those in the developed and developing world to live together and build a more sustainable society, people, and principally those in the developed world, need to fundamentally change their way of thinking of being contented with what they have and put a massive brake on the resources and energy they use. We have to turn today's economic model around, dispensing with our current society of mass production, mass consumption, and mass disposal, and at the same time, develop new technologies to allow us to keep our use of resources and energy to a minimum. It is not just the economy. Now is a time for us to harmonize humankind's politics, social systems, and technological innovations in order for us all to live together. A basic principle should be that of altruism, which seeks for the well-being of all things. I believe that altruism is a proper philosophical state for humankind from now on, and that we must start to build a civilization based on altruism. This is a civilization in which we live to serve others and not to serve ourselves. Until now, humankind has used its selfish desires as a motivational force to build today's wonderful advanced civilization. However, from now on, a motivational force needs to be an altruistic mind, that is, a gentle and beautiful mind that loves and cherishes others and seeks to allow all the Earth's living things to live together in happiness. With an altruistic mind as our guide, we should be able to alleviate the inequalities of our society, ease the tensions of the international order, where countries are all seeking their own national interest, and even prevent conflicts breaking out over resources and food. Making this shift from a civilization based on our desires to a civilization based on an altruistic mind. This is the most pressing issue for humankind. You may think that this is just fanciful thinking, but unless we shift our values from being based on desires to being based on altruism, modern civilization is doomed. The same applies to running a business. As business leaders, we have to stop thinking only of ourselves and our own desires. Working only in our own company's interest, it is vital that we start managing our companies with a kind and generous, that is to say, an altruistic mind, an attempt to bring harmony to those all around our business, our employees, customers, partners, and local communities. Business leaders should not relentlessly pursue their own wealth, but rather make sacrifice and devote themselves to maximizing the material and spiritual happiness of all their employees. It is unacceptable for one capable top leader to dominate a company's management, control its many employees, squeeze all the profits out of a company, and in doing so receive a huge salary. A business leader must receive a reasonable salary that all employees can accept, and they must nurture each and every employee to reach their full potential, harness everyone's collective power, and by working for the material and spiritual well-being of all employees, strive to correct the inconsistencies of our modern capitalism. This is the way leaders should behave in the 21st century global society. I believe that altruism is a key to solve the problems of a floundering capitalism. I also believe that having an altruistic mind will become increasingly indispensable to future business leaders in managing their companies. If all the world's business leaders had this kind of generous and altruistic mind when doing business, they will not only be able to eliminate discord in their companies, they would also be able to achieve better business outcomes. Capitalism, which has taken on an I'm all right Jack selfish countenances, could be put back on the right tracks, leading to a more harmonized, sustained development in the world economy. Many will say that this is just fanciful thinking, but this is not the case. I believe that repudiating greed, believing in doing what is right for others, and a leadership based on an altruistic mind is what leads to a firm's philosophy. My experience as a business leader for over half a century has led to my conviction that changing people's mind in the right direction can make all things achievable. With the objective of realizing the material and spiritual well-being of all employees, I established Kyocera from scratch, and if it is now the world's leading advanced ceramics manufacturer with a revenue of 1.4 trillion yen, or approximately 10 billion pounds sterling. KDDI, which I set up with the motive of offering a low-cost communication service to the people, is now Japan's second biggest communications firm with a revenue of almost 5 billion yen, or approximately 3.6 billion pounds sterling. Also, JAL, which I agreed to take on the task of rebuilding with no pay in the belief that it would be good for humankind and the people, has developed into one of the few airlines companies in the world to turn a good profit, and its revenue is currently in the order of 1.3 trillion yen, or approximately 9.3 billion pounds sterling. Currently, the fundamental basis of humankind and capitalism is being brought into question. From my own experience, I know that changing people's psychology can entirely change everything. We are truly at a turning point for civilization. If we do not rethink our ways but keep acting based on our own desires, the only outcome for a carefully constructed material civilization will be self-destruction. At question today is not just whether business leaders, but also all people in today's society will be capable of rejecting desires and selfishness as a basis for their life, and rather choose to base their lives on love and compassion. That is an altruistic mind. If we can, as individuals, change our thoughts and actions, the world will be transformed. I truly believe that we are able to create a new civilization based on altruism, where we cherish, help, and live together with all living things, however difficult it may appear. I believe that if we bring together humankind's intelligence and abilities, this can surely be achieved. This is because the force of a pure and beautiful altruistic mind has far more power than one based on guilty and dark desires. If we are able to put together the great power of humankind's good nature together with a brilliant intellect, I believe that with the time remaining to us, we will be able to build a greatly more advanced and abundant psychological civilization than the material civilization based on the desires that we built over the last 200 years so. I also hope the University of Oxford will continue to be a place where humankind can break through to this kind of new horizon. Thank you.